Hi everyone, my name is Nock and today I've got an exciting video for all of you VFX and modeling artists out there. We'll be diving into bad walls, the first HDA of the building automatic detail tools, a big toolset I'm currently working on. But before we get into the depths of bad walls, let me give you a quick overview of the bad tools project. I'm on a mission to simplify the workflow for all the VFX and modeling artists, making it faster and easier to transform any geometry into high-detail, RBD-ready masterpieces, having full control over the art direction without losing the proceduralism. Today, we'll be focusing on bad walls and how it can turn a simple flat polygon into a brick or tile wall. So, stick around for the full guide. At this point, you may be wondering, what's an RBD-ready geometry and why is it important? Okay, so RBD stands for Rigid Body Dynamics and is a widely used workflow for creating realistic destruction and colliding objects. As you can expect, the base geometry defines how your simulation will be, and having a different layer of pieces is crucial for achieving a realistic and dynamic simulation. BAD Tools helps you achieve just that by providing a set of powerful digital assets for creating and controlling the layers of detail in your models. Now that everything is set up, let's zoom in on bad walls, the first HDA in the bad tools. This tool is designed to add detail, especially in walls, by converting a flat polygon into a brick or tile masterpiece. And the best part? You can even input your custom pieces for a truly unique touch. So, let's dive into the bad walls guide. I'll break it down into different tabs for a comprehensive walkthrough. In the General tab, you have control over various parameters like cut mode, brick height, width, depth, spacing, jitter, offset, and transform pieces. These settings allow you to customize the basic structure of your wall. The most important part here is the cut mode. The orthographic cut will cut your geometry based on a projection on the three different axes. So height will control the y-axis, and then the width will control the x and the z-axis. If your input geometry is round or cylindrical shaped, the orthographic mode may not work well for you. The cylindrical cut mode is perfect for those shapes. Here you can control the width of the bricks by changing the divisions parameter. Maybe you have complex geometry with a lot of diagonals, and either the orthographic and cylindrical modes don't work for you. In this case, you can input the geometry or the lines of the floor plan to cut whatever geometry you want. This mode works well for organic shapes. Also, if you want a more rock-shaped brick, you can input your own points to create a Voronoi cut. Then, when you add detail to this geometry, the results are very organic and natural. And finally, the input piece mode. This mode is based on a completely different workflow, so we will explain it everything at the end. Jump to the minute 650 to see it. The rest of the options here are quite straightforward and intuitive, so I'll suggest you to play a little to get used to it. Moving to the Detail tab, here is where you can give life and fine-tune your wall even further. The first parameters you can see are the initial poly size, voxel size, adaptivity, and smooth. And those parameters are meant to control the level of detail you desire. The deformation part of the bricks is based on mesh deforming noises, but the final output is based on volume operations. So, on the initial poly size parameter, you can decide the size of a square polygon dividing your mesh evenly. If the size of the polygon is smaller, you have a denser mesh, so your noises will have more resolution. The voxel size will drive the resolution of the Boolean operations and the output mesh density. So again, less voxel size means more detail, but it will be heavier to compute. When you are happy with the final result, the adaptivity parameter will help to optimize your meshes. If you have some artifacts or extreme deformations, you can try smoothing out a little to correct them. If you have a really heavy geo, you can use the single pass to see only one brick and work faster. Take into consideration that working only watching one brick may produce unexpected results on other bricks. The Beveling tab has the basic bevel parameters. It's really fun to play with, and you can achieve really aesthetic results in no time. The damage and the worn tabs are actually the same, but with different amplitude controls and different frequencies. The way they work is by displacing the geometry based on a noise, and then cutting the parts that are out of the initial position. On the Damage tab, you have also a damage mask to give more control and randomness. The weight parameter interpolates between the initial position and the deformed position, and the amplitude controls how contrasted is that interpolation. The worn frequency is meant to be quite small. You have parameters to control how far inside and outside the brick you want to go. A value over 0 means no worn. You can use the amplitude to have more contrasted worn, but the values won't be over the minimum maximum. The last tab inside the Detail tab is for controlling the color. This is quite straightforward too. You can leave the black and white ramp and use it as a mask later on shading stages, or you can change the colors based on a noise or random patterns. I would suggest you use a primitive VOP after the bad walls with a color correction node, so you will have an easier control of the color. Following along, we have the Wooble tab. You can displace your bricks based on a noise, deciding if you want the bricks to be solid or if you want to deform the bricks as well. If you have parts of your model that cannot be moved, there's the Restore Edges function, where you can decide how far from your unshed edges you want the geo to be restored to the initial position. Now, if you want to get rid of some bricks, head to the Delete tab. Here, you'll find a bunch of options to selectively delete bricks. Sometimes you can have tiny pieces due to the detail or the cut of the pieces. If they are causing problems, there's a Remove Small Pieces to delete them. The Fix Flicker when animated is quite an important feature. If you need to animate the remove parameters, this option will help to improve the performance massively as well as avoid the flickering. But if you don't need to animate any parameter, it's better not to toggle this option and work with the Delete tab before working on the Detail tab. The Cement tab is perfect for giving the final touch to our model. It will use the input geometry as a source, subtracting the bricks. Then you can control how thick is the layer of cement with the cement erode parameter, and the space between the cement and the brick with the brick dilate parameter. If you have a lot of damage on your bricks, maybe it's better for you to use the Use Detailed Bricks as source function. And last but not least, with a totally different workflow, I'm gonna explain the Input Pieces Cut mode. The first parameter you see below the cut mode is one of the most important ones. It will ask for a piece attribute. If this parameter is empty, there will simply be outputting nothing. We can write whatever we want, for example, my pieces. Now, let's try inputting a pig head. As you can see, it's still not working. That's because we need to create the same piece attribute for our geometry. Our piece attribute was my pieces, so let's write it here. As expected, the pieces are scattered properly. Now we will try to input two different pieces. Let's create a rubber toy. As you can see, the rubber toy has many different connected meshes, but as long as all the primitives have the same value, the tool will work fine. If we merge our two geometries, the result is not what we want. Let's look at the geometry spreadsheet. The my pieces attribute is empty, that's why all the geometries are merged. Let's define a value for each one of the objects. So now we have the randomness we wanted. If you have a lot of pieces to input, the assemble node may be helpful, but take into consideration that every connected mesh will be treated as a piece, like what's happening here with the rubber toy. The input pieces are scaled automatically based on the number of points you are scattering to avoid intersections. As you can see, a sphere matches perfectly the bounding box, but the rubber toy is not that accurate. Take into consideration that rounded objects will create less empty space than flat objects. If part of the object is outside of the proxy sphere, there's a risk of intersections. You can offset the size of the pieces as well. Now that we know how to properly set our custom geometries, let's take a look at how the scatter works. As I mentioned before, this setup is prepared to avoid object intersections, and it's based on a dart throwing algorithm. So I split the parameters in two, the initial iteration and the fill hole iterations. When the fill hole iteration's value is 0, we are only modifying the initial iteration, so the fill hole parameters will not work. If we modify the point separation, we can see that the spheres are shrinking. That's because if the size were the same, the objects would intersect. Once we have the desired initial shape, we can increase the fill hole iterations parameter and start modifying the fill hole parameters. Because of the nature of the sphere throwing algorithm, on each iteration, the spheres are randomly scattered on the surface and then deleted if they intersect with a previously created sphere. So if our fill hole spheres are smaller, there's less chance of intersecting and we will need fewer iterations to fill the holes. If we are scattering bigger spheres, there's more chance to intersect and we will need more iterations. The one-layer scatter works the same way, but instead of scattering inside the wall, it takes the original surface and it scatters points on it. I know this last part of the setup is a bit tougher to understand, but I tried my best to make it as easy and clear as possible. So that's all for this first HDA. I really hope you found this video helpful or interesting. It's been a really fun project to work, and after all this long and hard journey, I'm really happy and excited to be able to finally publish the first tool. I'm eager on looking forward to seeing how you guys explore new ways to create with the Bad Walls HDA. Remember that if you have any questions, ideas, or suggestions, don't hesitate to leave a comment or send me a DM on LinkedIn. Thanks for all, and until next time, keep creating amazing things. Cheers.